I want to dedicate this segment to talking about Salena Zito's book, Butler. Is coming out soon. The cover is amazing with President Trump there at the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. Salena was there to do an interview with the president, and she had her daughter and son-in-law with her. And this is the story, not just about what happened that day and in the aftermath, but about the movement that President Trump is leading and some other personal touches that are sprinkled throughout the book, which I really, really love. So destined to be a bestseller. President Trump has endorsed it. She's got Ainsley Earhardt and Sean Hannity on the back as well. A triumph, and congratulations on it, Salena.
Thank you so much.
What was it like for you to write about those moments? Because I know you've talked about that day quite a bit. You did interviews, including on America's Newsroom, for which we were very grateful about it. But when you went to write it, did anything else bubble up for you that you hadn't thought about or didn't realize was on your mind or on your heart at the time?
So as far as the day goes, as far as that day goes, I, for some reason, I just have always been able to have very great recall and very great detail. Sometimes it's my worst enemy because it sticks inside my head. But I thought after, I started writing almost 3 weeks after the assassination attempt. And what I really wanted people to understand in writing this book, of course, to understand that day, how absolutely normal that day was, as normal as could be. But also to understand why the importance of place and rootedness in American politics. It's a nuance that pollsters miss, that strategists missed. But if you are on the ground, you understand how much that plays into people's decision on who they vote for. And it's hard to capture and it's hard to understand. But if you listen to people, you don't even need to ask them who they're voting for. It comes out in that answer. And place is important. A lot of people that are more transient, they leave home, they never come back, or, they leave home, they come back, but they stay, out of their hometown. Mm-hmm. The thing about place is it is something that is a part, it's a middle class or middle America, I should say, power. And what do I mean by power? Well, their grandmother's up the street. Their children and their grandchildren are down the street. There is a sense of connectivity and that you are living your best life and you didn't need to go to another place to achieve that. It's something to be heralded. And that's so missed in understanding American politics. Mm-hmm. And I really wanted to make that sure that came through as I continued to cover the rest of that race. And I think a lot of times it didn't. A lot of times people didn't understand that. And even when my interview with Governor Shapiro in the book, he has a very deep understanding of place. And that's why I think that he is very successful at his job in governing.
Yeah, that was interesting for me to read because you've known him for quite a while.
I have. I've known him 20 plus years. Mm-hmm. I've covered him for a long time. And
this book, basically the start of it is an act of political violence from crooks against Trump.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we know what happened there. But Josh Shapiro, 2 years later, a victim of, or a year later, not even a year later, right? A victim of political violence as the governor's house is burned down.
Yeah, and one of the first phone calls Governor Shapiro got was from President Trump. Mm-hmm. And he, this was after the book was already put to bed. But, they had a deep and profound conversation mm-hmm. about that. But just think about this. Both men in Pennsylvania, both the victims of men who had, it's hard to understand what Crook's political leanings were. because he was all over the place and he left no footprint in terms of social media. So it's really difficult to understand. But both men were victims of people who wanted them gone, just hurt, like destroyed. And so there's always going to be that sort of connectivity between those two men.
You didn't write too much about crooks in here. And maybe that's for somebody else to write about another time. But what did you have a conscious decision to not do that?
No, it's just that there's not that much information.
Right.
I mean, I went to the neighborhood. I went to the, I went to the door. I went, my home until a couple years ago was just a couple, a mile or two from his house. I know that neighborhood intimately. But very few people knew that family. They lawyered up, so they weren't talking to anybody. There was no digital imprint. I did go to the Clareton gun range, the sportsman's range.
Yes, because you say that was like a big part of his life.
It was, and it was really sad. You know what part really made me feel like this guy was just detached from reality, right? He's at the gun range on Christmas Day, on Thanksgiving Day, on Valentine's Day, on Sundays, days where you usually, and for hours, days where you usually spend time with your family.
Yeah.
And that's telling you something about him. We don't know all the details about him. I certainly, as hard as I tried, I couldn't. It was just impenetrable. You just couldn't get that information.
Let's set that aside and talk about your personal relationship with the president. He thinks you have the best, most gorgeous hair in America. And look at this hair, everyone. This is true.
That's right.
It looks really good. It looks good.
Just for you, Dana.
It looks great. You don't have to do it for me, but I think it looks good. You describe him with a warmth that I don't think many people in America have an opportunity to see. Now, his fans maybe intuitively understand that. I've learned also, from Caroline Levitt, about how much he loves having children around him at the White House. But you got to experience that warmth when he called you the very next day.
So he called me. People will read all the details about the book, but he called me bright and early the next morning. And he didn't even say, I didn't even say hello. And he said, Salena, this is President Trump. I don't know it's President Trump, right? And the first thing he says to me, are you okay? Is Shannon okay? Shannon is my daughter. She took the photograph of the cover of the book. And is your son-in-law, Michael, okay? And we vainly brought my son-in-law along to that event just to carry the equipment so we wouldn't get hot and sweaty. We did anyways. And I did, oh my gosh, my parents are going to be so mad at me, but I swore at the president and said, are you bleeping kidding me, sir? You're the one that's been shot.
Yeah.
But we had some incredibly powerful, I believe it's 7 times that he called me.
Yeah, I was reading here, this is on page 43. I will just read a little bit of it. I want everyone to buy the book and read it, but just let me read just this little portion that I marked. We talked about God, divine intervention, and Trump's purpose, but the meaning hadn't yet crystallized. I gave him room to figure it out. He seems to have pretty much put it aside. And I wouldn't say moved on. It's obviously a part of you that you'll carry with you. But do you think that he's had that room to figure it out? Because he's been so busy, obviously, as the president of the United States, the busiest person in the world.
Well, because he found his purpose in that moment. Because God was there, in his mind, his words, not mine. Because God was there, because he made decisions that he never makes, and he is a man of routine, because he brings that chart down like he's freaking Ross Perot, and he turns his head away, and he never does that. And he questions that several times in our when we talk. Why did I do that? And that's what I meant by giving him time. He gets to that conclusion. I have purpose. God spared me to fulfill that purpose. And that purpose has to do with get things done for the country. Now, if you think about it, Dana, and you were in the Bush administration, in a president's second administration, it does not move at the speed of light. It just doesn't. It's different.
No, it's bogged down.
Yeah, it's so bogged down. And
Trump got 2 first terms.
Yeah, he did get 2 first terms, and he's using this one very, very differently. And that happened in that moment. Mm-hmm. And in terms of how he's dealt with it, and people will read this throughout the book, he struggles with the death of Corey Compatore.
I was just going to get to that because I don't want to, again, I don't want to read too much, but I noted this part. And in the afterword, you again return to Corey Compatore and how he has him on his mind a lot.
Yeah, he really does. At the end of this week on Friday, I have 2 powerful interviews with Helen Compatore and Donald Trump about Butler. It comes out on Friday in the Washington Post. And I think it really helps people if they're willing to open their mind to understand the impact that day had on him, that it had on me. I take all 3 of our lives and intertwine them.
Yeah, it's a very, very special book. Can you add, I just want to tell people one more thing. On a light note, what did the president have you try on Air Force One?
So first of all, I was on Air Force One, okay? Holy heck, right? I've been a waitress. I've worked in a sewer treatment plant. I've been a cafeteria lady. Went to community college.
You're very humble. And obviously you've done a lot of different jobs. You're also one of the best journalists in America. So that's why you're on Air Force One. Yeah,
so I'm invited to go on Air Force One to cover this steel deal, right? Huge deal. So huge. But anyways, I'm on Air Force One. And actually, this happened in the Beast. I went into Beast, too.
So for people listening, if you don't know, the Beast is the president's vehicle in the motorcade.
Yeah. And I'm in the back seat with him. And he there's 2 ice cold miniature Diet Cokes.
Oh, wow, my favorite.
And here's Zito, have one. And I made a face. And he said, well, you don't like Coke? I'm like, I don't really drink pop. He goes, pop? What's a pop? Because when you're from Western PA and Appalachia, that's what you call it.
Same here. Grew up in Colorado and Wyoming. Pop is what it was.
Yep. And so he said, why don't you drink Coke? And I said, well, when we were growing up, my parents didn't have a lot of money. We either drank milk or water. Coke was like what rich people drank. And then if we did have it, only my dad was allowed to have it. and he said, you don't drink Coke? And I said, no, but I don't have any cavities, sir, because I never... And he was unimpressed with that piece of useless information. He says, come on, try it. He says, it's ice cold. I'm like, okay. I was like selling it like he owns Coke, right? So he opens it for me and I drink it, and I don't have a poker face to save my life. And I made the scrunchiest face ever. He goes, I can't believe you don't like Coke.
Oh my God, I love it. What a great story. Wait, does he call you Zito?
Calls me Salena and he calls me Zito. He calls me both. It just sort of depends. Well, but he's always very, very respectful. I think the people will love the part in the book where he chases me around with hairspray. Yes,
that's a great spot. Yes, you've told that on air before too. It's so good. Your name is Salena Salena Zito, the author of this great book, Butler, The Untold Story of the Near Assassination of Donald Trump and the Fight for America's Heartland. The cover of the book is gorgeous, with a photograph taken by Selena's daughter, Shannon.